All right, let's get to this reporting from the Harris campaign and Biden's involvement. This is from a new book coming out from Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes, two great reporters. We're going to have them on the show to talk about this book as well and get even more details of what all went down within the Kamala campaign. But they released this excerpt. We can put this up on the screen. So they are looking at this core question of like, why the hell did this woman not separate herself from Joe Biden, who was clearly like that was one of the core failures of this campaign. So let me go ahead and read this. They say that Kamala's rallies and convention speech had not answered the question of why she was running for president, how her vision for the country would deliver for voters other than having been next in line. She was running out of major moments to explain a vision to a broad audience. Her September 10th debate with Trump would offer another opportunity, perhaps a last chance before voters cast early ballots to establish that key part of her narrative. But the day of the debate, Biden called to give Harris an unusual kind of pep talk and another reminder about the loyalty he demanded. No longer able to defend his own record, he expected Harris to protect his legacy. It goes on. Whether she won or lost the election, he thought, she would only harm him publicly, distancing herself from him, especially during a debate that would be watched by millions of Americans. To the extent that she wanted to forge her own path, Biden had no interest in giving her room to do so. He needed just 3 words to convey how much all of that mattered to him. No daylight, kid, Biden said. And apparently this is something he said to her repeatedly. In addition, she just basically took over the Biden slot with the Biden campaign out of Delaware. So she had all of these Biden staffers around her who were also interested in like preserving his quote unquote legacy. They talk in this excerpt. There's an anecdote where they were in some other kind of prep for an interview, and she started ticking off like, here's all the great things that Biden did, blah, blah, blah. And one of the staffers was like, let's not do the whole trip down memory lane. That staffer was never invited back to the one who actually had a good idea. Yeah. That one was cut out and never invited back here. So, I mean, there's 2 things to say about this. Number one, Biden, what a shitty person. What a narcissistic person. Like, what a liar that you actually care about defeating. You cared more about your own ego preservation than actually defeating the guy that you said was, a fascist and authoritarian threat to the country. How pathetic is that? Yeah. Number 2, how pathetic is it that Kamala listened? Like, ultimately, she's the primary actor. She got to do what she wanted. She could have run the campaign however she wanted to. When that staffer got cut out, it should have been like, no, actually, you are cut out. Stephanie Cutter, the person who, was leading the charge there, you're out. This person's in. I need to shake this up. I need to listen to people who are actually going to give me good advice in order to win this campaign, rather than to protect the feelings of, an elderly, senile old man.
I completely agree. I was thinking about it. If you think in the past, this is always a tension when vice presidents run again while their incumbent president is in office. Vice President Nixon in 1960, Al Gore, George H.W. Bush. And in all cases, though, I still think they did a better job of distinguishing themselves from their person that they were in. And those people were actually popular as opposed to Biden. I mean, if you think about it just in terms of like pure nuts and bolts, not only is Biden dropped out of the race, which puts him at a way weaker position than any of those presidents previously, literal 2-termers who were pretty popular. They also have a situation where he's a senile old man. He's going to be gone in a decade. I don't wish for that to happen, but statistically, it's very likely. So what are you waiting for? Like, these stakes were literally so high. If you're a liberal, you got crushed. I mean, you basically ushered in a new era of American government. I think that's great, but you guys told us that was horrible and it was a terrible thing. And could you really imagine any Republican vice president, in a similar circumstance who wasn't willing to do that? I mean, even John McCain was more critical of George W. Bush when he was running in 2008 than Kamala Harris was. So yeah, I think this shows a profound lack of courage, both on the Walz and the Kamala campaign front. You can't say that you were hamstrung by Biden. It's just not true. I mean, the vast majority of the money that came in to the campaign came in after Biden dropped out. It really was on her name alone. Now, I think she was a terrible candidate, and the fundamental flaw from the very beginning, I think we talked about this at the time, is why are you keeping all these idiot Biden staff? I'm like, they're terrible, right? You could spin up something new. You got Ocean's $1.5 billion at your disposal. You need to really try and draw a contrast. And I think she lost. I mean, look, I don't think she ever really had a chance because of Biden, but she almost certainly really lost in that View interview when she was like, can't think of anything that I would have done differently.
Yeah.
It's like, that's it. It was, I mean, how many times do we say that here? America does not want this, period. So it's just loser all the way around here.
They thought that the fact that she, looked different, was a different race, was younger, whatever, they thought that would stand in for her being different for Biden. That was their theory.
Yeah, you're
Genuinely,
right.
That was their theory.
So stupid.
And I think, to me, like, she should have brought in her own people. I think you're right about that. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of sympathize. All right, we have this very short period of time. There's already a campaign in a box. I just got to go with kind of what I got here. But the problem with Kamala has always been that she doesn't have her own political sense and judgment. And you saw this in her 2020 primary campaign. They were always, changing the messaging with the seasons, as one staffer put it. She was for Medicare for all. No, she's against Medicare for all. No, she has her own thing. Oh, I didn't answer that. I didn't understand the question. I changed my mind. She doesn't have her own core, number one, and her own political gut instinct of what she should do and where she should be. So if she kept the same staffers, but she was like, guys, it's an idiotic idea for me to think that just because I'm a woman that I'm going to be seen as different and a break from Biden when I was literally part of this administration. Like, that is foolish. And every poll shows that the biggest liability I have is this dude. So we got to come up with something better than this. Like, she could have done that with the staffers that she had, but she didn't. And, again, this is stuff we talked about sort of ad nauseum during the campaign about how when you don't have your own view of the world that you can articulate, that you can make sense to other people, when you have reporters like Jeff Stein, who was like trying to what would you actually do? And we never actually really knew what the priority would be on day one, then you're not going to come across as authentic to people. They're not going to believe anything you say, really. And, you end up in ridiculous situations like this where Biden says, no distance, kid, and you're like, yes, sir, sure. Let me just tank my campaign and, hand the country to a bunch of fascists by not separating myself for you. Another instance of sort of weak Democratic answering here. Katie Porter is running for governor in California. I like Katie Porter. I think she did a lot of good stuff when she was here in D.C. She was one of the few people. She really has an understanding of sort of like Wall Street and banking, and she was pretty committed to standing up against corporate abuses. This is someone, Matt Stoller has really appreciated, et cetera, too. But she gets asked this question, okay, let's say that Kamala Harris gets into the governor's race, and this is a Pod Save America interview. What happens then? And she's basically like, yeah, I'll pretty much just get out and defer to her. Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
There are rumors that the vice president may get in the race later. I saw some reporting that you said that the vice president might clear the field, and I was surprised to see that one of your advisors apparently told CNN that you wouldn't run against Kamala. Is that true?
Well, so listen, what I've said and what I'm going to say again today is that I think if Kamala comes into this race, especially if she comes in tomorrow, she comes in now, it's going to have a near field clearing effect. It's just going to be, I'm not sure there's a big field of people. And some of them have said they're staying in no matter what. Right? So I think it's going to shake up the field. I said it's going to have a sort of a seismic effect. That said, we got to start this process now. Kamala's going to make her decision in her own time. The vice president is owed that. That's her decision to make. And I've worked with her. I know that she's a careful decision maker. She's a thinker. And so she's going to make her decision. But in the meantime, it is full speed ahead. Voters, I'm not waiting around. And I don't think voters are waiting around. They want to know how we're going to lead. They want to make plans for what we're going to do with regard to Trump. And so I think there's a hunger for people to lead in this moment. And I'm stepping up.
But I'm like, honestly, what I expect from, as someone who admires and respects you as a leader and a political figure, I'm surprised you're not saying, I don't care what Kamala Harris does, I will be the best governor. That's what's confusing to me. Isn't the person that's supposed to lead this big fractious state the person who says Kamala can get in, who I don't give a fuck, if she gets in, I'll beat her?
Well, I'm not sure that our leaders, people want to hear our leaders say it.
Well, the way that you would say it, I have to find the right district for my vibe, but.
I do think, look, I am not waiting for Kamala Harris. And I don't think anyone should who wants to lead. I think what it means to lead is to literally step forward, right? To be willing to be at the tip of the spear in this moment. That's exactly why I'm launching. That's why I've been working on this. I am not sitting back waiting to see what Kamala does. I am not considering other races, hedging my bet. I'm going to be California's next governor. But it would also be, I think, disrespectful to somebody who went toe-to-toe month after month after month in a grueling race against Donald Trump and I saw this firsthand, personally, serve California very, very ably as our attorney general, not to acknowledge that this is somebody who would be an incredibly strong candidate, and there are practical realities that anyone faces.
I mean, what is with this deference? Like, make the case for yourself. If you want to run for governor, you got to be able to say, I would be the best person. Here's why. You can say, I respect Kamala, but we have a different view. And here's why I think I should be the fighter that California deserves. Like, this is not hard. And yet, I mean, it reminds me of also Hakeem Jeffries getting asked about Eric Adams, who is like wildly unpopular in New York City. And even then he can't say, I think maybe he should resign since he's been caught in these like naked corruption scandals. Like, what is with this deferential, bend the knee, avoid controversy at all costs? And they're always trying to think, rather than say what they really think, they're always trying to figure out how to get the right answer. And that comes through. You can see her processing in real time, like, okay, well, I don't want to piss off this constituency. And, she was this historic trailblazer, but I want to assert myself. And it just ends up as this mess rather than just saying, listen, Kamala Harris is going to do what she's going to do. But here's why I think I will be the strongest candidate for governor and I will be the next governor of California. Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's like you're living in a cult. That's what it is. You're living in a cult of deference. And just imagine, American politics is not really supposed to work that way. Now, it's a little ironic for people to talk about that on the Trump side. But, to his credit, he did win. He won the primary in 2024, and he won the presidency. And so, in a certain way, he's like earned his status, whereas Kamala is literally the worst performing Democratic candidate on a ticket since John Kerry. Like, imagine in 2005 if Obama was like, well, I'll just leave it up to John Kerry. It's like, what? Why would you ever do that? They rightfully were discarded. Same in John McCain. John McCain had no say over Republican affairs after 2008 correctly. In 2013, you think the Tea Party was calling up Mitt Romney and be like, hey, Mitt, let me run this one by you. It's crazy. This is one where if you lose, like I like the British model, then you're done. You're gone. You should not run for anything. Kamala, I mean, she could try in the Nixon famously ran for governor of California and lost after he lost the presidency, but it was like a road of redemption. Maybe that's how she views her future, but I just have no idea where this Katie Porter type energy comes from, specifically the way that she positioned herself when she was here in Washington. The other sense, and maybe you know more about this than me, is that because the California Democratic Party is so archaic and is so like literally locked down and run from the top, that you have no real choice but to try and preserve your way within the system. And maybe the California Democrats there want her to run. I don't know why they would want that. It'd be a disaster, but I have no clue.
I don't know either. Yeah. I can't say with regard to the California political landscape. It is a bit of a machine state and whatever, but it's just pathetic to see. It's just pathetic to see. Like, this lady has not earned this level of deference whatsoever. And Katie Porter genuinely does have something different to offer, so that's what makes it extra disappointing to see this response from her.
Yes.
Last piece we have here, which is just really interesting, and again, kind of goes back to what we were saying about some of these shifts with the Democratic base and who they're seeing as leaders, the direction they want the party to go in, et cetera. I can put this up on the screen. So CNN asked this question. It says here, who do you think the leader of the Democratic Party is? That isn't exactly the question that they asked. They actually asked who best represents the values, the core values of the Democratic Party. And coming in first place is AOC, which again, and then number 2 is Kamala Harris. Makes sense given, she's still just top of mind, whatever. Then Bernie, then Hakeem Jeffries. I don't know who those people are. Then at 4%, Barack Obama, tied with Jasmine Crockett, 4%. Gavin is at 2. Pelosi's at 2. Alyssa Slotkin, 2. Schumer, 2. Tim Walz, 1. So, I'm curious what you made of this, Saagar. But I mean, you can see there's ideology all over the place. But what you see at the top of that list with AOC is she has been out front and very vocal and very aggressive in challenging Trump and the Trump administration. And that's what people want to see. It's also funny because it comes on, I think it was an earlier poll where you had, some plurality of Democratic voters who were like, we want the party to be more moderate. but then it's like, this is who we think is moderate. This is who we think reflects our values.
AOC is just a Democrat now. I mean, didn't want to primary people. She was, this is the part I don't really understand. I really believed Democratic voters would reward people who only called out Biden for his age, like Dean Phillips. I don't know why they're not doing so. Like AOC and Bernie were two of the people who actually stuck with Biden longer than many moderate Democrats who called him out in the future. So I guess Trump is the only thing that matters to them. I don't really understand why. I think voters should reward good political judgment in the moment. You should look to people like Nancy Pelosi and others who, look, this is ideology aside. It was good political judgment at that time to be like, this is not happening, period. Like to be for some of the first people to actually call Biden out for his age. I thought that would matter more. It doesn't appear to be. Maybe just because of the way the news and all that is working, it could matter more in a primary. But looking at this, yeah, I mean, the political theory of resistance, or at least the appearance of resistance, is one that's quite popular right now. I actually think outside of all of it, the number one story to me is Barack Obama at 4%. That's where I was like, wow, because that's how you know that the Obama psyop, which has basically lasted since 2004 when he went on the DNC stage, is officially over. You know, I was telling you this about the Michelle Obama podcast. And look, I mean, it's just shocking to me that this person who is an internationally famous woman who at one point had one of the best-selling books in history has got 36,000 subscribers on YouTube and is getting like 100,000 views on her podcast episode with her brother. One of the clips she has, Krystal, is 13,000 views, and it's called, in my opinion, Plain Etiquette, where Michelle is telling us to, quote, keep your toes to yourself. Lady, when's the last time you even flew on a commercial airliner? 20 years ago? It's not to dunk on a Michelle. Yeah. Well, I guess part of it is. But it's just to show like that is just not where the energy is right now. Whereas these Midas guys are racking up 2.5 million, views on a clip. So the Obama era is over. I mean, if anything, that might be Trump's greatest gift to us all.
Well, because if you think about it, so right now you've got Elon slashing and burning through government, handing himself contracts, the richest man on the planet. You have, we're about to talk about, like, hundreds of people just disappeared into a foreign prison and court orders openly defied here and in other instances as well. You have them going in now, we've already got documented instances of Social Security benefits being taken unjustly from people, including one instance where it was literally taken out of someone's bank account because they thought that she was dead and she was not dead. You've got them planning a massive tax cut for the rich, massive cuts to Medicaid. You have an all-out assault on the government and the liberal order. And, an anti-Semitism, I'm going to talk about today, being weaponized in order to crush dissent, crush free speech, crush academic freedom. And where are the Obamas? Like, they have nothing to say about that. Nothing to say about it. So, yeah, how could that reflect the core of what the Democratic Party base sees as happening in this moment? On the other hand, you have AOC, who's out there every day. She's on Twitter, she's doing Instagram Live, she's getting in people's faces, she's doing cable news hits. She is out there. And while she doesn't have any more power than anyone else in the Democratic Party in this moment, she has made herself visible and made it clear that she's as upset at what is going on as they are. And that's really what people are looking for. I mean, Bernie really set the standard with going out and starting these town halls. Now you see other Democrats starting to follow that model as well. That's why he ends up sort of at the top of this list too. Jasmine Crockett kind of comes out of nowhere to be now tied with Barack Obama in terms of who reflects the core values of the party. Because, while there is a sense of, down the road in a Democratic primary, there's going to be ideological debates of whatever. Right now, there's almost no luxury for that. It's just like, this is happening, this assault is happening at a faster pace than anyone could have possibly expected. And the people who are at least showing some courage and putting up a fight, those are the people who need to lead us going forward. So it's not a surprise to me that AOC ends up at the top of that list. But I do think, it's very different from how things would have been in the resistance era or even in the Biden era or whatever. She always was sort of, when they did questions about who's the leader, who's the core who represents the core values, et cetera, she was always seen as more of a fringe sort of character within the Democratic Party. And now, because of the way she's asserted herself, because of the way Bernie has asserted himself, they have really sort of claimed the moment and filled the vacuum for what people are looking for.
Yeah, yes. Caveats still apply. is she doesn't have good political judgment if you still look in the past. It's this whole like getting in the face of things. I mean, that's a big reason why liberals, or leftists have not been very politically successful. A lot of the times that they've tried to do this in the past. And there is like a huffing your own glue attitude, I think, in a lot of liberal circles where they're genuinely convinced that this is going to work. I mean, in general, I would still rather bet on the political judgment of some of these more establishment types. I don't like them, let me be clear. But
Saagar, I don't know that it's a political judgment. I think it's
it is.
I think it's a sense of genuinely feeling like the country is being taken away from them right now.
But they said that in 2017. They said that in 2020.
All right, well, let's move to the next segment and we can talk about it then.
Sure. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.